women's soccer team to Columbus. The chair of the Southwest Area Commission says the plan was never discussed with the group, looking for a new community park site after McCoy Park was chosen for the team's training facility.
It is Tuesday, May 12th, here on the Big Picture Station. Now, Ken, thanks for coming back, day 2.
I'm glad to be here with you. I got to be honest, though. Tuesday's rough for me, Collin. This is my least favorite day of the week.
Yeah, I have those days where it's like I can get up and I get going, and then other days, can't do it.
No, it's Tuesday for me every week. There's something about this day that just, I don't know, prevents me from being on time, getting out the door, waking up. I don't know what it is. I had a friend once say that Tuesday is the day with no identity because it's not the beginning of the week.
No.
It's not the midpoint of the week. It's just this day.
Yeah, it's just there.
But the weather is going to be beautiful, so we're glad about that.
It is going to rain tonight, but at least it's overnight when most of you are sleeping.
Not you.
Right, not me. I will be
driving
on
in the
my
rain
way
to
when
get
it is
here.
raining.
It's true.
But I'll get to enjoy the niceness afterwards.
Yes, you
so that's what I've got to
will.
think about.
Yeah, so we're glad that you're here on this Tuesday because there is a lot to talk about today.
We do have a lot to talk about. So let's kind of go into what we've got to talk about. So the Ohio State University is now pushing to have some of the lawsuits thrown out that of former students and athletes who are suing the university regarding the Richard Strauss sexual abuse allegations. The university and AG Yost's office are saying some of these shouldn't count. It's about a third of the remaining ones. Then data centers, obviously a big talker here in central Ohio, in terms especially of how they affect your electric bill. So 10 Investigates reporter Rochelle Aline's going to join us at 9:30 talking about her latest investigation and sit down with PJM, who is the operator of the regional grid, and AP Ohio. Yeah, but the big one right now, obviously, Dublin redistricting.
Big meeting last night. Lots of parents coming out. I'm a Dublin mom, so I am familiar with this from a news perspective and then also as a community member. And this topic has been contentious, to say the least. That was continued last night in the meeting. And just as an FYI, we have Dr. John Marchhausen coming on the newscast here tomorrow to talk with us about this, because it really has become a topic, because there are 3 high schools in Dublin. They're redistricting. They're moving some folks around because this is an area of huge growth, and they're trying to make sure we're not busting at the seams at one high school. So they're trying to move things around, and everybody has an opinion about this. And so last year we thought we were moving forward with a plan. They'd put 3 plans out there, and we were moving forward. And then all of a sudden one day they said, you know what, we're going to step back. And so we're in the step back phase now, where they have relaunched another moment of redistricting. We don't know what the plan is. But here's the thing. In Dublin, everybody knows someone who says they've seen the map that's out there, and it creates all of these rumors. It creates all of this vitriol, really, with people who have big opinions on something they heard from a friend who said they saw something.
Right. And social media just gets people just whipped into a frenzy.
Takes it to another level.
Yeah, this goes back to, I mean, Scioto, which is on, the east side of the river. That one's been crowded for a while, but then now you've got all of these new people that are moving into that Union County side of Dublin.
Right, on the northwest side.
On the northwest side. So it is this issue now of how do we best serve our students? And some people are like, well, this school's better than the other, but you're in Dublin City Schools.
It's Dublin City Schools,
There
y'all.
is no
They're all
bad
good.
school.
No, it's so true. And having worked in the schools as a volunteer or going in for stories, I've seen the care and really the compassion in all of these schools from the students for each other, from the faculty and the staff for the students. And there is so much to be proud of in Dublin. And I'm so sad that this process has turned into this, because we have so much to be excited about for the students who are in this district. And this has just become a whole different thing. So what we know, especially after this meeting last night, so it's Scioto, Jerome, and Kaufman. Those are the 3 schools. And they're trying to figure out how to move everybody. And this affects my student as well, because we were thinking he was going to Jerome. The last time we saw the maps, it looked like he'd be going to Kaufman. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. And let's be honest, they may redistrict again before he's in the 1st grade right now. So before he gets to 9th grade, we may do this again.
They might.
We don't even know. So we're going to have Dr. Marchhausen come on tomorrow to give us more perspective on this, because I think the rumors have really gone out of control. We do know that a map is expected June 29th, but as we saw last night in that meeting, people already have something to say for a map that hasn't even been created.
Right. Yeah. And this is what, some of those parents had to say about it.
Now we're just trying to make sure that they follow the criteria, and the criteria as they're laid out, I think actually make a lot of sense.
I think tonight proved that this board is in over their heads.
We were told the new process would now include full transparency, and I have to say that has been almost 100% not the case.
You are not helping these students, you are enhancing building outcomes.
So, the board has made some promises in this that they're going to try to move the least amount of students as possible. I mean,
affect the least amount of families.
Right. And especially those students who are, currently not transportable, meaning you live too close to the school, you're walking distance, like we're not busing you. Those students will be left alone, at least to my understanding, in some of the guidelines they laid out. But they're also taking into effect, traffic patterns, because that's something that we heard from when this popped back up, was that, well, if you move my student from whether that be to Scioto to Kaufman or
the latest rumor was Jerome to Scioto. The latest rumor was that all of the kids on the north side, the northwest side, who are in this area of new growth, were all going to be put into the Scioto side, and that existed only from rumors. And then the police chief of Shawnee Hills spoke out and had an opinion on the traffic patterns and new drivers and how that would be could be so dangerous.
It just went. Yeah. It quickly.
Again, it's all about somebody who knows somebody who has seen something, who said, this is what I saw, and but it's all third, fourth hand
Yeah.
information. It just takes on a life of its own on social media.
And I'm really curious how this does shake out.
Me
because
too.
It's an inevitable thing that whether we do it now or we do it 5 years down the road, that eventually we're going to have to shuffle students.
It's going to happen. And one of the things that I want to ask Dr. Marchhausen about tomorrow, because we've had an opportunity to speak with him before, but I think tomorrow will be a wider conversation, which will be nice. But I feel like at some point, perhaps mistakes were made in a previous redistricting process where neighborhoods or streets or things were carved out. Are we doubling down on mistakes of the past by not fixing some of those areas? Is that something that's being discussed? I mean, if we get an outside service who is helping us figure out the right path, then I'm curious to see if you're just outside and you're not taking into account opinions of people who have their preference for high school for their child.
Right.
What does that actually
Because
look like?
there's, even with how it's laid out now, ever since I've been here, there have been the accusations that it's carved up on socioeconomic lines.
Right.
And, that is something that I think people want to not be taken into account this time. That, my student, no matter how much we make or where we live, has that chance to go to. And like we said, there is no bad school, no bad high school in Dublin. They're all
true.
incredibly well high
all
performing.
Wonderful. And my husband looks at it, he's like, oh, do I want my son to go to the 9th best school in the district or the 8th best school, or the 7th? I mean, they're all
When
really good schools.
The margin of difference is like that.
Yes, they're really good. And so is it in fact going to be based on geographic, logistical traffic patterns for what makes the most sense as far as getting students who are closest to these schools to those schools?
Yeah.
So we're going to talk more about that tomorrow because this process is just beginning. So we had the Dublin School Board meeting last night. We saw how contentious it got. And I think there's just a lot of frustration. And at this point, we don't know anything. We haven't seen the maps. So let's see what comes next. We'll have Dr. Marchhausen here tomorrow to give us more perspective and more insight on what that process is like from the inside.
Yeah, and he's going to be sitting down with us right at 9.
Yeah.
So make sure you tune in then because, it'll be a good conversation last, 12, 15 minutes talking about what this process is going to look like.
And some of the rumors, some of the realities. So we'll talk about that tomorrow.
Right. So the other thing that's come out, I guess yesterday into overnight was this motion from OSU / the AG's office to dismiss about a third of the remaining claims regarding the sexual assault allegations against Dr. Richard Strauss from really 1978 to 1998, 77 in total. There are 236 of these cases still remaining in the court system, 5 federal active lawsuits, but 236 men are alleging these allegations. So this motion to dismiss was filed by current Attorney General Dave Yost, writing on behalf of The Ohio State University, saying that 43 of these 77, should be dismissed in whole because this alleged abuse happened before the date of October 21st, 1986. So this whole motion comes down to a specific date and time. And why October 21st, 1986?
That was my first question.
Well, that was the day that Congress passed a law which allowed states and educational institutions to be sued in federal court for not taking steps to prevent sex abuse against students. So the part of that rule, this motion is that, well, since it happened before Congress said this was a bad thing to do, we can't do anything, is kind of how this reads. The other 34 that are mentioned in AG Yost's motion is they can be dismissed in part, not in whole. So some of it can still stand because, well, this happened spanning that time. Some of it happened before this October 21st date. The other part of it happened after. So any of these things that happened afterward can still stand.
It was very confusing to see this news come down, and especially after having just spoken with the new president at Ohio State, Dr. Ravi Bellamkonda. I spoke with him just last week and asked him about the Strauss investigation because he's the 4th president to be faced with these lawsuits in effect, and the survivors still say, we're not being heard. This compensation is not appropriate. And so it was different than what I'd heard from him, where he says, these are members of our family. That's what he's told me, because I asked him about that in his very first press conference. He says, these are members of our family. I feel for them. We want to do right by them as best we can. And speaking to the settlements that have been put into place so far, and he talked about
this all came out in 2018.
2018.
Yeah.
$61 million has been used so far. He said 317 settlements, and committed to continuing that dialogue to arrive at a place for the remaining victims. And that's what he told me last week. And so this judgment from Yost, I felt, was a surprise based on that statement.
Right. And I mean, we heard, once this kind of came down, we did reach out to one of the plaintiffs in these lawsuits. This came from Stephen Schneider Hill, and, basically asked you, what are your thoughts? And he said, other than fighting the survivors in court for 8 years, they are now trying to throw away 77 people who were sexually abused on, quote, sovereign immunity. And then went on to say, they also filed this as 9,000 students were in the shoe receiving their diplomas. That is who OSU is. So, I mean, it is a scathing statement. And obviously, if as someone who would have gone through this, this would feel very disappointing. If that's probably a light way to put that.
Right.
And this all comes just a week after there was this massive document dump in terms of the Strauss allegations, where we got to see some of the depositions breaking down who knew what. And a lot of these depositions kind of point to that there were a lot of, or several at least, OSU leaders that were aware of at least some of the allegations, but then dismissed it as rumor. Some of the depositions saying, well, that's just what we did in the 1980s and 1990s. We paid no attention to it. And now here we are, he left in 1998, 3 decades later, still going this. Another person that was in there was the former Ohio State medical director, Dr. John Lombardo. He was the one who let Strauss go from his role. And he mentioned in his deposition, it wasn't because of the allegations, it was because of being put on suspension that he couldn't continue to do his job. So, this all kind of is continuing to just bubble up time and time again.
The whole process is just so heartbreaking, and the more we learn, the more heartbreaking it is, because I do think that, especially for Dr. Bellamconda, in the conversations that we've had, his goal is to help these survivors to make them whole as best we can. You can't go back in time, but I'm very curious to see what happens next in this, because it really has become such a difficult process for everybody involved. But the survivors, they really are, they continue. I feel like the anger is growing.
Right. And, Dr. Bellamconda has been with the university now for several years. And at least in, the snippet that I heard, he did seem very sincere about that it's time to make this right and regain what damage has been done to the reputation.
I like that he said these are family members, and because we are talking about an Ohio State family, and I thought that was a powerful statement to make.
Yeah. All right. So coming up next, it is tick season.
Okay, now when we run stories about ticks and mosquitoes in our newscasts, like, it just gives me I get itchy. I get itchy just looking at the video. So I'm really fascinated to talk about the tick season and research happening, because, the first question I'm going to ask our expert who's joining us next is if she finds herself itchy focusing on researching ticks, because I just see the video and it just makes me...
So that's coming up in 2 minutes. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Big Picture on this Tuesday. If you spent much time outside, of course, it is warming up. Those ticks are looking to hitch a ride on you. So right now, we are joined by Dr. Vanessa Verrill-J, Chief Research Officer with The Ohio State University's Infectious Disease Institute. Thank you so much for coming in.
Okay, so I already revealed what my first question would be. Because in the news, when we run these stories about mosquitoes or ticks and we see them crawling, or bed bugs, that's another one. It just gives me the creepy crawlies. Do you find that in your research? Do you go home and you're just like, oh, today,
Yes, and I talk about ticks a lot, so my husband and daughter know all about it.
And we had heard some insight that this tick season was going to be especially bad this year. Is that what you are seeing from your research?
Yeah, so what we're seeing, especially through our Buckeye Tick Test laboratory, the data are showing that there's a really clear picture of where ticks are spreading and what pathogens or germs that they're carrying. And statewide, what we're seeing is that the black-legged tick, also known as deer tick, about 1 in 5 of these black-legged tick adults are carrying the pathogen for Lyme disease.
And it's Lyme Disease Awareness Month,
And
which I had not realized.
As someone who, one of my chemistry teacher in high school had, he was someone who was affected by Lyme disease. And this can be an incredibly debilitating disease, depending on the severity of it. So, I guess when it comes to identifying ticks and using them and identifying pathogens and whatnot, how does this work?
Right. So the Buckeye Tick Test is part of Ohio State's Infectious Diseases Institute. And we work closely with Dr. Risa Pesapane and her lab in the College of Veterinary Medicine. And we work to understand how ticks are spreading, which ticks are present, and how they're spreading across Ohio. So together we launched the Buckeye Tick Test last year, and the lab really serves 2 roles. So first, it's a public-facing fee-for-service where people can send in their ticks that they found on themselves or their pets or other animals. Yeah. And we identify the species and test for pathogens. So again, those are germs like bacteria that can cause disease and make us sick. And I can attest that this has been a valuable resource for my own family and friends.
What do we get out of this as a community for participating in the Buckeye Tick Test? What's the benefit to the community?
So it really helps both the individual and at the community level. So for individuals, it can give you a better sense of risk. So what tick is present, what the species is, and then also what pathogens that they're carrying. And this can be really useful information to be able to have conversations with your healthcare provider or veterinarian, but it is important to note that tick testing shouldn't replace medical evaluation or delay care, especially if somebody is experiencing symptoms. But I will say that some people even submit ticks that they find in their yard, even if they weren't bitten, so that they can get a better sense of potential exposure for their family or pets from their property. And from the community level, I will say that every tick that's submitted to Buckeye Tick Test contributes to statewide surveillance. So this helps us better track which tick species are present, what pathogens they're carrying, where they're being found, and when they're active. So we share this with public health and research partners, and this ultimately contributes to better surveillance and prevention strategies and public health preparedness.
Well, we had a really harsh winter. We had weeks there where we were down in the single digits. And what does that mean for the tick season to come? I mean, they're out now. We need to start being aware, because I feel like tick season in my mind is kind of later in the summer, but they're already here.
Yes, and ticks are not just an issue in the spring or summer. Many tick species, including the black-legged ticks or the deer ticks, which carry the causative agent for Lyme disease, they're active year round.
Oh,
So
no.
even in the winter, especially during milder winter days. And another thing that we're seeing is that more than half of the ticks that people report are not coming from parks or hiking trails. They're being found right at home in their own backyards and neighborhoods.
Okay. Wow. So I'm thinking to myself, we're going to go for a family hike. I'm going to be prepared. We're going to wear our long layers but I'm not thinking about it every day when I walk out into my yard. Oh man.
They're out there.
Yeah. There are effective ways to prevent your chances of getting tick bites. And these include, yes, wearing long pants and tucking into your socks wherein possible, using EPA registered repellents on any exposed skin. And you can also consider using permethrin treated clothing, which helps repel and kill ticks as an added layer of protection. But it's really important to do a careful tick check after you've been outside, and also to shower if you can when returning indoors.
How do you talk to your child about this? Because you mentioned your daughter. I have a 7.5-year-old at home. How do I make sure he understands that when he heads out to play, that we've got to be aware of ticks?
Yes. So I just tell my daughter that, ticks are these, creatures that can cause germs and disease. So yes, we want to enjoy the outdoors, but also we need to stay safe. And so, we've got to put on these repellents or wear long pants. And then when we come indoors, let's just check and make sure that we don't have any on us, and make sure that, when we're bathing, that we're doing tick checks. So, yeah.
It's good advice. I mean, here we are, and just talking about it. I didn't even see any video, and it gives me the heebie-jeebies. Oh my goodness!
All right, Dr. Merrill J., thanks so much for coming in here on The Big Picture and joining us. Coming up next, we are talking with Jay Fox from the Ohio News Network. A coalition of 6 Southeast Ohio counties have gotten together to secure some federal grant money through the congressional direct spending. That's coming up next. We're breaking that down. Jay Fox, thanks for coming in. So there's this instance. 6 Southeast Ohio sheriff's offices have gotten together because we've seen continued state funding cuts, whether that be due to property tax decreases, etc. So these 6 Southeast Ohio county sheriff's departments have gotten together for federal funding. What's going on here?
This is a really interesting solution to a really big problem. everybody needs money. And we've seen stories in our hometown of Columbus where funding is an issue. We've seen stories all over the state of Ohio. So Washington County Sheriff Mark Warden decided to call his pals in Athens, Monroe, Noble, Morgan, and Meigs County, and they formed a coalition. And it is the first of its kind in the state of Ohio. As a coalition, they applied for and have secured $454,000 in what's called a federal grant through congressional direct spending.
Are you saying the money is out there and they've figured out a way to bring the federal money here locally?
They did. So I had no idea what congressional direct spending meant.
Yeah,
But then I heard the word earmark and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what an earmark is. And that's exactly what it is. It's a legislative mechanism that allows members of Congress to direct federal budget items to localize projects. So this particular sheriff gets his group together. They get the congressional people behind them, whether they be representatives or our 2 state senators, and they ask for specific money for a specific reason.
So I guess, my question about all of this is we've kind of leapfrogged past, I guess, the next logical spot, which would be going to the state first.
Yes. Why wouldn't you shop at the state grocery store first? The answer is the lines at the checkout are too long.
Oh, wow.
Everybody and their brother is applying for state money. And that's not the only reason. We know that budgets in the state of Ohio have been cut. But even more importantly is some of these grants that come from the state, Collin and Stacia, are too low to accomplish what the design purpose is. So when you're trying to buy specific, products for surveillance, it doesn't cover the cost if you divide it among several different counties. The other reason is that the strategic goals may not necessarily be in line. The state may have one, and they have really strict criteria, whereas the federal grants are a little more lenient.
Do you think there's a wider message for other counties out there to say, look what we did here, and that other counties are going to say, ooh, maybe there's something for us to try?
So even though this is the first in the state of Ohio, there are some 30 county coalitions across the United States that are going after this money. And in this particular case, what we're going after in Ohio, these 6 counties, are a formulation of intra-communication devices so that we can share resources and information immediately. We also now add cameras to support the deputies in the car and other surveillance tactics. And the reason why this veers into federal matters is because we're talking about stopping drug trafficking as it enters Southeast Ohio. So when you look at a map of Southeast Ohio, you're dealing with West Virginia and Pennsylvania. And anytime you cross state lines, it becomes a federal matter. So because it's a federal matter, they qualify for an earmark.
Now, does this give the federal government control over these departments?
That was the first question I wanted an answer to, and the answer is no. Because the earmark is a one-time, think of it like a CapEx expense on a budget. It's a one-time allocation of funds for a very specific purpose, and the sheriff in each county retains their autonomy. So it's not like the federal government is saying, here's some money, but do
now,
it our way.
Yeah.
No, it's not like that at all, which is good news.
Right. All right. Jay Fox, thanks so much for coming in.
Always a pleasure.
Coming up next, obviously, we've all been talking about it, data centers in Ohio. And then,
it's got to be the number one topic right there. And then Dublin redistricting is right behind it.
Right.
No, I'm
we
just
probably
kidding.
talk about data centers once a week. Well,
Yeah.
Coming up next, the wonderful Rochelle Aline is joining us here on The Big Picture to talk about her latest investigation and how data centers are tied to what you're paying for your electric bill. So that's coming up in 2 minutes. 9:33, Rochelle. Welcome
Good
in.
morning.
How's it going?
Good. How are y'all doing?
Oh, doing all right. So, the topic that is the story that keeps on giving, data centers.
Yep.
And I think the thing, we hear all sorts of problems from, concerns, whether that be from water quality issues, the noise, but then the other one is how much I'm personally paying.
The cost.
Yeah. So your latest story is kind of really digging into the total cost of what this is costing you and I as residential electric customers.
Correct. This started kind of to go backwards. People had been reaching in and saying, my electric bill has jumped. Some people were saying their bill had doubled, but they're not using that much more electricity. And they were like, what gives? And so did some digging, reached out to AEP and some local providers, reached out to the OCC, the Ohio Consumers Council, and basically found out that data centers are actually driving the bump a lot of people are seeing in their bills. And this investigation kind of dives into that. It's twofold. Data centers are driving up demand. They have basically what one expert told me is the amount of electricity that data centers have requested from the state is 3 times the amount of electricity that Ohio normally uses at peak hours. And so our system just wasn't prepared for all that demand in such a short window of time. And that costs money, right? It costs money to create energy. It costs money to distribute energy. And so we're all kind of sharing the cost of that in real time.
And whether we want to or not.
Correct.
Are we going to share the challenges even to come, maybe things that we're not even experiencing yet?
And that's part of the conversation in the story. We had one story air this morning and one story airing tonight, right? So I think the first story was just setting the ground floor on that and explaining like, this is the issue, this is why you're seeing that jump. And then I took those concerns to experts and saying like, hey, we all know now that data centers are kind of at the heart of this. What are y'all doing about it? And should we be concerned about other issues down the line? And so this morning's story, I kind of broke it up into 2 halves because everybody's bill is actually broken up into 2 halves. Half of your bill and the expenses you see come from your local energy provider. So let's say you have AEP. Part of that is distribution costs, how much money it costs them to get the electricity into your home, and certain little maintenance fees. The other half of your bill is coming from the grid provider, which is PJM here in Ohio. So some of that is the cost for them to physically create the energy and then to distribute that energy to Ohio state lines, and then AEP takes it and then takes it to your house. And so that's how your bill is separated. And so I separated this investigation in 2 halves. And so I want to play the story really quickly, but I took that concern to AEP and I said, well, for your half of the bill that's going up, we know data centers are at the heart of this increase. What are you doing about it? And so this is the result that we got.
In the last few years, AEP Ohio says the amount of energy that data centers have asked for was 3 times the amount this area uses during peak hours. To help rein in those requests, last year, AEP Ohio passed a data center tariff. It forces new data centers of a certain size to go through a more thorough approval process, and it also requires them to sign longer contracts.
You don't want a data center to come in and say, yes, we're going to build this data center, we're going to use all this power, you all respond, build infrastructure to support them, and then maybe they back out of the deal, and you're left holding the bag for all that construction you did. Is that fair to say?
I think your summary is close. The data center tariff separates those costs and takes the burden of risk off of all of our other ratepayers.
But leaders with AEP Ohio admit this is only half of the battle.
In the market that we're in, there's a severe imbalance of generation supply versus generation demand.
And which way is it skewing?
The demand far exceeds the supply.
Where should consumers be looking to get more energy?
So the imbalance between supply and demand is part of PJM's responsibility and process.
So PJM, which is the regional grid operator, comes into this as well.
Correct.
And, I did a story with them probably this time last year talking about this very thing. And at that time, they were kind of saying the same thing of, we're out of power.
Yeah.
That hasn't gotten any better.
No. So I don't want to steal too much of my own thunder. I have a second part to this investigation airing tonight at 6, but I sat down with a leader with PJM, right? So the same kind of questions I posed to AEP for their half of your bill, I brought it to PJM and saying, well, here's what one of our local energy distributors are doing. What are you doing at a grid level? So PJM represents 12 states and DC, 67 million customers. From my understanding, they're the biggest grid operator in the entire United States. So this is a really big issue for them. The leader I spoke to said that governors from all different states, including Governor DeWine, have complained and said, you guys have got to do something about it. I'll give away one little secret from, the story tonight at 6. He told us right now they don't have an answer. Same thing that you heard last year. But what they're doing now is they're petitioning the federal government to put a cap on how much they can charge states just so that your bills don't go up any higher over the next 10 years so they can figure out what to do about data centers. So they're trying to give themselves a 10-year window to try to solve this problem. And in the meantime, try to cap how much they can charge you so that people, can hopefully afford their electric bills.
A couple of things stand out to me about this.
Yeah.
I, as just a customer, PJM, this is not a company I'm familiar with. I get a bill from AEP,
Correct.
for example. I don't get a choice
Nope.
who my grid provider
Nope.
is. So I am forced to just pay whatever it is they're charging.
You're locked in, yeah.
Locked in, so we don't have a choice. And it's electricity. We're talking about a basic foundational bill for your home.
Correct.
The other component that I think about is, I feel like the votes initially with data centers, everybody was like, oh, data center and it taxpayer money and da, 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 da. But now we're seeing what this actually looks like, our reality. The bills are coming in and we're all going, wait a minute, this looks different. And I feel like that's creating new challenges for more data centers, because now the general public is saying, you know what? Nope, I've seen enough.
They're
No
turned
more.
off.
There's wide-ranging impacts here.
Yes.
We've made this, kind of haha, but it's not, it is the one thing that we have found that has united both sides of the political spectrum.
Which is so rare.
Where people are like, no, thank you.
Yes. Yeah. And it doesn't matter, the various different reasons, but you've got a lot of people who are up in arms over these things.
So in your reporting, with everything that you've learned, because I imagine you learned a lot in this process, are you walking away hopeful by what you've learned, or are you walking away going, this is going to get worse before it gets better?
I think I will say I'll give it some time. There's a lot of very smart people who acknowledge that this is a big problem. I mean, one expert put it bluntly and said, there's a lot of political pressure, right? There are a lot of politicians that want to remain in office and want to fix this data center problem and are incentivized to do something about this issue. So that's part of it. Based on what I've heard from the experts I spoke to, I am willing to give those folks a few years to see some progress before I put up my hands and say, this is out of control. It sounds like they have a decent skeleton plan. I'm waiting to see how the rest of it kind of fills in, because I think people are going to get to a point where they can't afford their electric bill. And then what do you do?
Right.
I don't know.
And when it comes to the amount of power or electricity we've got, I know it's been discussed, I think it's still in the works, to turn 3 Mile Island back on the nuclear plant in Pennsylvania as a way, is really a stopgap measure to try to get more electricity flowing.
So what they're doing, part of it is because, again, we're literally running out of energy. They just cannot make enough to fit the demand for data centers and you and I in our homes and businesses. They are now asking new data centers to basically come with their own power supply. So what people don't realize is if there's a data center that's being built in your community, they're probably building a small power plant. It may not be nuclear, but they're probably building a small power plant to power themselves because the grid cannot handle them. I don't think people know that's happening.
No, and it's so confusing. I mean, because Rochelle is one of the smartest people I know, and she does such a great job of breaking down these complicated issues. But the average person hasn't done the interviews that you've done, and even if we're paying attention, it's still so confusing. And I feel like people are just going to say no. And band together in their communities to say no more data centers, because there's just so much that's involved in this bill.
Correct. I will say, to bring politics into it a little bit, I covered Amy Acton's campaign on election night. And before election night, I got to ask her some questions about her policies and things she would implement if she was governor. And we ended up talking about data centers. Her stance on things is, she's like, data centers aren't going anywhere, right? This is part of the future. AI and data centers is kind of like if you squeeze all the toothpaste out of a paste tube, you can't put it back in. They're here to stay. And so she's looking at it as, they're here to stay. We're probably going to end up building more, right? We kind of need them to a degree. So what can we do proactively to make them work for us instead of against us?
This is going to be a huge issue in this whole entire election.
Whoever wins, correct.
So what time's tonight's story airing?
I haven't talked to our producers yet, so I'm not sure.
So
I think
that
6
means-
o'clock. I think 6.
That means you got to watch from 4 to 7 p.m.
It's a
here
mystery.
on 10 TV. So, all right. I look forward to it.
Thank you, guys.
Always learn something from you, Rochelle. Thank you so much.
All right. Who's coming up next?
We are going to talk about a really special march happening in Columbus this week. Carry the Load. You know, May is Military Appreciation Month, and this is part of that. We're going to talk about that next. Welcome back to The Big Picture. May is Military Appreciation Month, and we are talking about a very special march happening this week in honor of fallen veterans. And we have Mark Elliott, the global head of the Office of Military and Veterans Affairs at JP Morgan Chase, who is joining us live to talk about this march. It is part of Carry the Load. Looks like we are having a little trouble
let's see.
with the camera there.
Oh, I just accidentally booted him out. So, anyway, I'll let him log back in. As he logs back in, he should pop up.
Okay.
With that being said, this is an important event because it highlights the importance of the service that is done time and time again. So we're going to take another quick break. Get our technical issues figured out. This has been the first time we've had this many problems with the vMix calls, so we'll be right back.
All right, welcome back to The Big Picture. We're still having some technical difficulties. We really wanted to talk to Mark Elliott, and we hope he will give us a call here in a second so we can talk more about this march happening on the 14th. So it's happening this week on Thursday during the day, 1:30 to 3:30 in the afternoon. This is video from last year as Columbus residents march through downtown in honor of our fallen. And it looks like we've got Mark joining us on the phone right now.
Hi, Mark.
And we're so glad that we can...
Yes, this is Collin. I'll put you on speaker and we'll get you on the air.
Because we're looking at video right now, Mark, of the walk from last year. We know you have 800 people registered for this event on Thursday. Why is this such an important event in our community?
Yeah, first, Dorsey, thank you for hosting and having me. This is important because it's an opportunity for us to remind people why we have this day we call Memorial Day. And that's important because it represents sacrifices of individuals and families who've paid what we call that ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms, for our safety, for the things that we enjoy. So we're not saying don't go out and enjoy, Memorial Day, do the barbecue and do those things, but also remember that there are loved ones around this country who may be carrying a burden of not having a loved one with them. And this is just a way to remind them of why it's important for us to not forget this moment. And so we partner with with Carry the Load in what they call, Memorial May. And this is just a way to do this across the country, just in different cities, and saying this is important for us to not ever forget the sacrifices that these families and individuals made.
And to that point, we know freedom is not free, and our community has been recently reminded of that fact with the 3 airmen who were lost in a refueler crash back in March. So this is really personal to all of us because of the freedoms that we enjoy. How does this march show that support for our service members?
Yeah, it's a way for the families of those 3 individuals who were lost to share that load with others. We cannot replace that hole in their heart that they have, but we can spend a little bit of time with them. And what the Carry the Load walk does is it gives individuals a chance to share those stories about their loved ones and to lighten that load a little bit with some memories of the wonderful things that individual represents. And then for the other individuals to hear those stories and maybe be part of that, passing that story on to the next person of the sacrifices. But it's also important for us to, do this because young people are watching us. And if they see that we're not taken care of and not, remembering the sacrifices, and maybe we have a few less who are willing to take on that responsibility to serve. So this is really, for the benefit of the nation to always remember we need young people to sign up and say, I'm willing to risk this being the ultimate sacrifice of my life for this nation. So it's really a circular kind of a thing that we do here by supporting and remembering, and we're also paying it forward to those young people who we hope will also take on that responsibility. So it's really important for us to not ever lose sight of this.
Far-reaching impacts, for sure.
Yes.
Mark Elliott, the global head of the Office of Military and Veterans Affairs at JPMorgan Chase. Sir, thank you for your service, and thank you for sharing that message with us today. Once again, Carry the Load, happening on May 14th. That's Thursday from 1:30 to 3:30, and it starts at the National Veterans Memorial and Museum, a march through downtown Columbus, where we know hundreds of people are going to show their support to carry the load for service members and their families who, in honor of our fallen. And so, Mark, we just really appreciate your message.
No, thank you for having us, and JPMorgan Chase will always support this organization, so thank you.
I'm excited for that showing of people because it is powerful when we gather as a community and make sure that we are honoring our fallen and the families who are carrying that load after losing a service member, showing up is important. And we all talk about thank you for your service. This is a tangible way to show up and gather together and make sure we are showing that thanks and showing that support. It's going to be a beautiful scene on Thursday.
All right. So as we head into the summer months, it's time for events, obviously.
Oh, yes.
And one thing that was announced, we've got all these wonderful events going on, but one thing going on is the summer movie series at the Ohio Theater.
Ooh, are we talking summer movies now? Just in general?
Yes, we are. In general, all the movies.
And from Kappa.
Yeah. So we can do this. Here's a preview of some of the movies that are coming up this year.
Okay.
This isn't about revenge. It's about preventing another war.
The Force may be strong Memorial Day weekend as The Mandalorian and Grogu drop out of hyperspace and into cinemas.
I now pronounce you husband and knife.
June looks to be the busiest month at the movies, with Toy Story 5 among the high-profile releases. It's joined by Masters of the Universe, horror comedy Scary Movie, Steven Spielberg's Disclosure Day, and the next movie in the DC universe, Supergirl.
The Minions are back with a touch of mystery.
Buddy. Hello! The Minions head back to theaters in July in Minions and Monsters. The 7th month on the calendar will also see the release of the live-action Moana remake, along with Christopher Nolan's The Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day, marking the first MCU movie release in a year.
Have you been horribly injured by a product made by the Acme Corporation?
It's not your fault. Fans of Wile E. Coyote Super Genius won't have to wait much longer for the courtroom comedy Coyote vs. Acme, which arrives at the end of August. Other big screen fare opening in August include Super Troopers 3 and the animated adventure Paw Patrol: The Dino Movie.
Paw Patrol 2. Oh, man.
Yeah.
The Dino, I shouldn't say Paw Patrol 2. We've already done that. Paw Patrol, the Dino movie.
The Dino movie.
I still feel like at that point my 8-year-old he'll be excited about that.
You think?
There's a lot of movies this summer that look fun for the whole. I mean, Toy Story 5. I guess I'll just plan to bring my box of tissues.
I love the Toy Story franchise, but as someone who has now my entire life has always just been one